Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to your Friday edition of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by FanArch. I'm your host, David Grubb, editor in chief of thebirdrights.com. And the New Orleans Pelicans finished their road schedule on Thursday night with a loss, losing 136-111 to the Milwaukee Bucks, a 25-point loss at that. Um, a very tough way for the Pelicans to close out their road schedule, no doubt, against a tough opponent. The Bucks surging lately. That was the Bucks. Excuse me. That was the Bucks' sixth win in a row, I believe, for them. A good win for the Bucks as they try to get their playoff seating in order in the Eastern Conference. For the Pelicans. Um, just incredibly undermanned team. At this stage, so many players were missing, and the Pelicans were without so many players. Only had 8 available players dressed for this game. Um, no Kelly Olynyk in this one. Um, he sat out with injury. You just had so many Pelicans. Yves Misi also didn't play. Um, Bruce Brown didn't play. Jose Alvarado didn't play. So the Pelicans were really, really shorthanded. They had to put Kyler Kelly finally got some minutes in this one, the center that they had signed recently. He got to play. He played 23 minutes in this one. That tells you how deep the Pelicans had to go into the bench. And these guys are worn out. Played a couple nights ago on the road in Brooklyn. Lost that game. Traveled to Milwaukee, play against this tough Bucks team, and really this game, it turned in the second quarter, though it was still relatively close at halftime. The game was essentially over by halftime. The Bucks scored 41 points in the second quarter, outscored the Pelicans 41-28, and led by 8 points at the half, and then just continued to surge in the second half. They scored 74 points in the second half. Um, you know, 115 in the final 3 quarters. The Pelicans gave up a game worth of points in 3 quarters. That's not going to get it done. When you give up more points in 3 quarters than you scored over the course of the game, it's not going to get it done. Pelicans only had one really good offensive quarter, and that was the third quarter where they scored 31 points. But other than that, it just really wasn't a great effort, though you did have some nice individual nights. Statistically, some things that popped out. First and foremost, you got to give it up to Jamal Cain, who has largely been a non-factor, but given extended minutes, 27 minutes in this one, he scores a career high 20 points, gets 7 rebounds, has a steal, and goes 5 for 5 from the free throw line, 3 for 7 from 3 point range. His best game of the season by far. Jeremiah Robinson Earl pressed into starting duty, a guy who's gotten really inconsistent minutes over the second half of the season after really kind of being Willie Green's guy earlier in the season. He finishes with a double double, 15 points and 10 rebounds for him. 6 of those rebounds coming on the offensive glass. So a nice performance for him. He had the best plus minus of all starters at a -5. Keon Brooks, another good game for him. 20 points for Keon Brooks, 4 of 8 from 3 point range, 7 of 13 from the field overall, 6 rebounds for him, only 1 turnover in 32 minutes. Keon Brooks continues to impress. And again, filling that Najee Marshall type role of a physical defender off the bench, a guy who will shoot the 3 point basket, can get to the rim in one-on-one situations, and is a very good player in transition and rebounds his position. So good things from Keon Brooks as well. Alfred Payton gave you his fourth consecutive game with 10 plus assists, 15 assists in this game. But again, with Alfred, the frustrating thing is just his inability to score. As a reserve, it is fine to be assist first because that second unit, it's a lot harder to get offense going. And yes, the Pelicans with these guys starting, you have players who are not in the habit of getting their own offense on the NBA level. So you need somebody to do that. But Alfred, as the fifth starter, can't be a black hole when it comes to scoring points. And he only had 2 points in this game. Coming off the last 2 games where he's really only made one bucket over the last 2 games, and he still put up these huge assist numbers. It shows how gifted a passer he is, but he has to be able to score. And to give you 2 points, to finish with a -17 plus minus for him in a game the Pelicans lost by 15 as a starter in only 26 minutes. We've talked about this problem with Elford. Not a great defender and will not score. And so those things have him stuck to the bench for any team in this league. His salary on top of that, as a veteran, it makes it hard to keep him around. So I mean, I think if you're Elfrid Payton, if you really want to try to force the Pelicans' hand this offseason and have them sign you, then you've got to play better than this as far as scoring points and coming off the when you come off the bench. Because there may be an opportunity, knowing what's going on with DeJounte Murray, there may be an opportunity for someone to fill in as a short-term starter at point guard next season, ahead of Jose Alvarado, who is best suited in a backup role. But for Elfrid Payton to continue to come out and start and only give you 2 points as the starting point guard, that's just not enough, no matter how many double figure assist games he gives you, because he's not a good enough defender. And he doesn't give you enough points at that point guard position. It is a scoring position. If this were the 1980s, maybe he could get away with that. But even then, your pass heavy point guards gave you more than 2 points in 26 minutes. It's just not enough production from him. Antonio Reeves, not a great shooting night for him. Again, when teams know you're the only shooter, I think that he's starting to see a little bit more attention. There becomes a more of an adjustment for that. But this is really the first bad shooting game he's had since getting extended minutes. 37 minutes, a lot for him to play at the NBA level. Only 5 of 15 from the floor, 2 of 8 from 3-point range, 16 points on the night, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover. So not a lot of turnovers for the Pelicans by and large, especially from the guys who handled the ball the most. That's a good thing. The assist numbers overall, by and large, 28 assists on 41 buckets. That's pretty good. The shooting on the night, not great though. 42.7% shooting for the night, 31.9% from three. The Pelicans 15 of 47 from 3-point range. Attempts high, makes pretty good, but just not proficient enough against the Bucks, who shot the ball 40% from 3-point range and 54% from the floor. The Pelicans just didn't have enough defensively to challenge Milwaukee in this one. Milwaukee was led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who only played 3 quarters and had 28 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Kyle Kuzma gave them 17 points. Gary Trent Jr. 17 points after he had 29 against the Pelicans. When they played at home, he was 4-7 from 3-point range. Bobby Portis came off the bench and had a good game, 14 points for him in 22 minutes with it to go along with 8 rebounds as well. So for the Pelicans, just a disappointing end again to the road schedule. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, and just how different this season has been than last season for the Pelicans on the road. But before that, I just want to give some props to Carlo Makovich, who I've been tough on, and I will continue to be tough on, because I think it's just like when you talk about teachers and coaches and things like that. When they're not tough on you, that means they don't care. And so for Carlo, I think it's a guy that clearly fans like and should like, because he comes and he brings a high effort. I think what you get from Carlo right now is very reminiscent of Billy Hernan Gomez. I think Carlo is a more athletic Billy Hernan Gomez, where I think Billy was a better, you know, basketball player who understood the game a bit more. A guy who's been part of EuroLeague championships and things like that, been an MVP overseas. Billy had more practical basketball IQ, but Carlo was the better athlete with a higher offensive ceiling, it looks like, on the NBA level. Carlo again shot the ball well, 6 of 12 from the floor, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, continues to expand his 3-point shot. But the disappointing things for Carlo: no free throw attempts. When your bigs don't get to the free throw line, that's a problem. You need to be able to get there and get some free throw attempts. He had 10 rebounds, but only 1 on the offensive glass. So you got to give your team some second chance opportunities, particularly when they shot as poorly as they did from the floor against the Bucks. Carlo has to give his team some second chance opportunities as a big. Fouls again, 4 fouls on the night for Carlo in 30 minutes. Certainly, when you're guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez, that's not an easy gig for him to handle either one of those assignments, and it wasn't. They took advantage of him defensively when they could, but I think, when you get Carlo 8 straight games in double figures, you're at least getting consistency of production in offense, and he's averaged. Um, 13.3 points over those 8 games. He's shooting well over 50% from the floor, shooting a good percentage from 3-point range, and rebounding a good amount as well. The problems for him continue to be defensively and his propensity to get into foul trouble. If he can't control those things, he can't be anything more than a third back than a third big, because I think Eves, his defensive ability, the fact that he consistently gives you a little bit more rim protection from a standing position, not in a chase down position where Carlo's blocks tend to come from. Uh, I think Eves, stays ahead of Carlo on the pecking order as he should. You're going to be looking for some added defensive help on the front court this offseason. If you're David Griffin, you have to be Kelly Olynyk, Eves Macy, and Carlo Makovich is not enough to get it done defensively in the front court. Even adding Zion Williamson, who is moving his game more to the wing now, and the Pelicans thinking and how they plan for him offensively and defensively, he's becoming more of a wing player. So that interior defense is going to be much more reliant on traditional looking bigs, guys 6'9", 6'10", and taller. The Pelicans do not have enough of those guys to defend right now. So if you're looking for help, defense is going to be where it is. And Carlo just does not defend enough. He's going to be a guy that probably comes back next year on a two-way contract, doesn't have a full-time NBA deal with the Pelicans. He's probably on a two-way deal. Or his situation will be such that you know that the Pelicans again have to find minutes for him because he just can't stay on the floor on a good team. On a good team, Carlo's not getting 10 minutes a night. He's just not. So those are the things he has to benefit. He has to get better at. But I think the potential is there. The two things that you want to see the most out of a young NBA player are number one, does he want to compete? And I think Carlo definitely wants to compete outside of the skill set, of course. You got to have skill and talent, but he wants to compete. He has a high motor, and then he seems coachable. So if he can take advantage in the offseason, because this is not a league where you get better during the season. Playing time certainly helps. Everybody gets into a rhythm when they get playing time. You get confidence when you get playing time. But skill wise, you don't expand on your skill set typically during the regular season. The off season is when you do that. And for Carlo, it's going to take a lot of film work. He's going to have to spend a lot of time in the video room watching what he doesn't do well, watching good defenders and how they work, and then getting on the practice court and just getting repetitions in with whomever, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's other players back home, whether it's here in the United States. If he stays here during the summer, we'll see what happens. But for Carlo, it's all about getting better on the defensive end. As enticing as the offensive game is, and he had some very, a highlight reel dunks during this game, and he seems to get one every night. There's a highlight for Carlo just about every night. But unless he gets better on the defensive end of the court and becomes a better volume rebounder, particularly on the offensive glass, it's just going to be too hard to get him any meaningful minutes. He becomes much more of a player that you might see once a week going forward if he cannot improve on the defensive end. One of the things that's going to have to improve next year for the Pelicans again is their road record. After last season, when the Pelicans set the franchise record, and I think we're the best in the NBA, going 28-14 on the road last season. Winning 2 out of every 3 road games last season. This season, the Pelicans finish 7-34 on the road. 7-34, tying for the worst road mark in franchise history. Um, this is just it's not good enough. It's not good enough for the Pelicans. Now, the road record, has been a problem for this team. Last year was an aberration for them to be so good on the road and then to be so mediocre at home. Only 21 home wins this year. So bad in both places as the season kind of fell apart. But in particular, you kind of have to look at this as like the Pelicans versus the Eastern Conference in particular, because we knew how that the West was going to be a gauntlet and just ridiculously hard all season long. But the Pelicans' record against the East overall, and they have one game left against the East when they play Miami on Friday night. So when they play the Heat in this Friday night game, they have a chance to finish. If they don't win it, they'll finish 8-23 on the against the East. They went 19-11 against the East last season. They're going to have 31 home games. I mean, 31 games against the East this year due to the schedule quirk of the in-season tournament. They ended up playing the Pacers 3 times this season. So they end up with 31 road games, where typically you play 30 against the East, but 31 road games, 31 games against the East, 8-22 so far going into the game against the Heat. When you look at the record against the East in particular, and you look at these teams, the Pelicans only had a winning record against three Eastern Conference teams: the Chicago Bulls, Philadelphia 76ers, and the Washington Wizards. None of those teams are going to make the playoffs. Um, and in particular, Philly and Washington are right there with you for the worst records in the NBA. So you swept really bad teams, but everybody else in the East, 0-2 against the Hawks, 0-2 against the Celtics, 0-2 against Brooklyn, 1-1 against Charlotte, 0-2 against Cleveland, 0-2 against Detroit, 1-2 against Indiana, 0-1 against Miami, 0-2 against Milwaukee, 0-2 against New York, 0-2 against Orlando, 0-2 against Toronto. The Eastern Conference, the conference that we talk about time and time again, that if the Pelicans were in the East, everything would be so much better. No, doesn't look like that, does it? It doesn't look like that, does it? Because at this winning percentage, and the winning percentage they've carried over the last 4 years, they're a losing team overall against the Eastern Conference over the last 4 seasons. A losing team against the Eastern Conference over the last 4 seasons. And in that span, you have two winning seasons and two playoff seasons. And overall, you have a losing record against the worst conference. The worst conference by far. Every team in the West, you have teams that could fall from the 3 spot all the way down to the 8th spot in the Western Conference standings. That's how tight they are. But all those teams have winning records. In the East, you could have 3, 4 teams in the play-in tournament with losing records, and the Pelicans are struggling against on a yearly basis. Last year, the only year of the 4 where you had a winning record against the East. Hard to justify. It's hard to justify again. When you talk about the reasons to keep or to let Willie Green go, when you have a losing record against the Eastern Conference over these, 4 years, it's another one of those things that I think will go into the assessment and ultimately be an indictment of what Willie Green has done over 4 years. You can't continue to be this bad against bad teams. The Pelicans, win and have won when the conditions have been perfect. But the minute that there's some oil in the ointment, then the problems just seem to be exacerbated. It's like even, losing by 25 again to Milwaukee on the road, a Milwaukee team that's not at its best, playing good basketball. Again, they've won 6 straight, but you lose by 25 on the first game of a back to back. So now the Pelicans will go home to play the Miami Heat, who do need the win. The Miami Heat do need the win. Um, they're locked in at that 10th spot, but they can move up to 9, potentially past the Bulls. They could catch the Bulls. So if you're the Heat, you need these wins just for positioning. You'd like not to be in that 10th spot and have to play. If you move up to that 9, you get the Atlanta Hawks. If they could even, if the Hawks lose a couple games, the Heat win a couple games, the Heat can move all up to 8 and potentially be able to move on early on in the play-in. So it's just there's the Pelicans against the Eastern Conference has just been too much failure, and I think the Pelicans have to really look at that when they examine whether or not they want to retain Willie Green as the head coach for next season. Finally, it is the home finales this weekend. The Pelicans host the Heat and the Thunder. Excuse the bottom there. I messed that one up. I was supposed to, the Bucks were last Sunday, but it's the Heat and the Thunder this weekend. This game means something to the Miami Heat, as we just talked about. Miami Heat trying to climb up a little bit higher from 10th in the Eastern Conference. Pelicans trying to avoid a sweep at the hands of the Heat. Well, if they win, they would avoid it. I don't know if they're trying to at this stage in these last 2 games. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of energy is in the arena for these final 2 home games, knowing that you don't have much star power on the court. The Oklahoma City Thunder have already clinched the best record in the NBA. They don't need any more wins to get home court through the NBA Finals. They're 3 games up on the Cleveland Cavaliers. So if you take that for what it's worth, that game won't mean anything to the Thunder, but the Thunder are still healthy. And I think a semi healthy Thunder squad sending out its reserves is still going to be better than what the Pelicans send out. So if you're the Pelicans, you could be going into this season having lost your final 7 games in a row, another 5 game plus losing streak for this team in a season that's just been marred by extended losing streaks. Um, it's just it's bittersweet. I mean, you hate to see the end of the regular season because you love basketball and you care so much about the season, but at the same time, you're ready for this thing to end. The second worst record, the Pelicans have locked that up in the history of the franchise. Um, and the worst defensive team in the history of the franchise, the most lineups used in a single season in the history of the franchise, the worst 1 year to the next fall off in the history of the franchise, minus going from 49 wins to 21. That at least a 26 game drop off, even if the Pelicans win their next two. Um, it's just been unprecedented bad basketball for this team this season. The only other drop that comes close is the Pelicans went from 46 wins to 21 wins. In 2010-11 to 2011-12, the 2012 team season cut short by the lockout that year. But that those are the biggest drop offs that we've seen in Pelicans franchise history. So many historically bad moments to go along with this season, and very few highlights. I think the highlights are limited to maybe 4 or 5. The highlights being Zion Williamson looking like the kind of player that you can build a franchise around. Trey Murphy growing into that starter's role. Um, CJ McCollum giving you the 40-point and 50-point nights that he did this season. The maturation and improvement of Eves Misi to go from 21st pick to starting and probably an all rookie team member this season in a season where there weren't great rookies, but no one expected him to be in the mix for an all rookie berth. And then I think just the rookies in general. You take the rest of those guys, the Antonio Reeves of the world, and Carlo Makovich and Keon Brooks, and how they performed. And I think those are your only positive takeaways this season. I don't think you have much else to look at. You can't say any other player had a personally successful season. There weren't a lot of milestones that were hit in a positive manner this year. It's really limited to those guys. Even looking for signature wins, it's just really hard to find a bunch of moments. But we will go through them throughout the off season as we give you more and more content. We try to make sure that we keep you abreast of all the latest rumors with the Pelicans. We'll be talking about the draft as we build up towards the lottery in May, and then of course the draft in June, and then into summer league in July, and then back at it for training camps as we get later and later and later. So, thank you so much for sticking through us. We're going to be back here on Monday to get you, to recap the weekend, and we'll start the off season then. Until the next time, make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, you share it to fellow Pelicans fans. And then, of course, you can follow me on social media at DM Grubb, whether it's Instagram or Blue Sky or whatever. And then don't forget to check out thebirdrights.com for more Pelicans information each and every day. So until the next time, I am David Grubb, and let's go Pelicans.